We must beware the mental junk food of the modern age. Now, the things that we do obviously have an effect on us. There's the saying, you are what you eat. And I think it is just as true for the mental. You are what you consume. You aren't your thoughts in entirety, but the quality of your life is determined by your thoughts. And the book As a Man Thinketh by James Allen is that's basically the main point I think that book is trying to get across. The fact that what you think about has a big part in who you become, the quality of your life. And in this day and age, there's so much mental junk food that inhibits our thoughts and manipulates our thoughts in certain directions, which are not fruitful for us or other people. And we need to realize that spending, say, 15 minutes scrolling on, TikTok or Instagram is it is not just 15 minutes of our time. It is it is for one building a habit in an area that will consume far more time in the future. It is also inhibiting time before and after the consumption, before with the desire to do so and the time it takes to, you know, partake in the action. And then after the fact, you may be thinking about something you saw that is just trivial and not fruitful in any which way whatsoever. You may spend the rest of your day in a with your mood dictated on something that you saw, or you may, we don't realize how much it messes up our dopamine, our focus, and our attention. And that 15 minutes may take you away from deep, focused, attentive work in an area that would have brought you fulfillment, satisfaction, and would have given you a good dopamine hit instead of spending it on Instagram and then getting a dopamine hit for motivation to keep scrolling, to keep, you know, spinning the slot machine in the metaphorical sense of social media to see what other video you can see that will spike your interest. And it has a it's hard to see the effect that it truly has if you don't if you aren't quote unquote addicted to it and then abstain from it, because then you will truly see the effects that this has and how much time it takes away from you. Now recently I realized how powerful ending your days are good. There's some things I think where we used to practice it, and then it gets to such a point in time we forget the impact that this thing has on us, and we slowly start getting away from it because it's just now baseline, and we don't understand that the profoundly good impact something is having on us. And I was slowly getting away from ending my days in a reflective, intellectual space. And I was noticing that was having an effect on my morning. And the morning has an effect on the day, and the day has an effect on the night. And your day is your life. Your life is just made up of days. And I was realizing that in this, I was partaking in habits that were not detrimental in and of themselves, but were not fruitful. And the worst part was that they were not setting me up for success. They were building a environment of less attention, less focus, less insight, less reflection, less development internally. And that was taking up far more time, because it might just be the couple hours I spend before bed. And maybe you're tired, maybe you've had a long day and you just want to distract yourself. You just want to relax, you just want to turn your brain off. And that's understandable. That is completely understandable. But we need to realize that what we decide to turn our brain off with is going to last, the impact of that is going to last longer than the action in and of itself. And there's certain things that are better than others. I think reading is one of the best because it promotes intellectual improvement, and it also doesn't promote short form instant gratification, which can destroy your drive, dopamine, focus, and delayed gratification that you need to produce great things in this life and to do great work and to give your gifts to the world. And I think also to just be happy, just to be generally happy with life and enjoying your existence completely and fully. It helps immensely to get away from short form content. And reading is always a long form. Typically, most books are, reading in a long form. You have to spend hours to finish the book and to get that reward of completion. And then there's nuggets of gold in the book that randomly come up to give you more, drive to keep going and get further into it. And that can be a great way to turn off your mind. And it's obviously what you read matters, but reading in a sense, I think, is healthy. It's healthy food, it's healthy mental food. Scrolling is junk food. And there's many other things that can be considered as mental junk food that take up hours of our life, even though the action may only take up a couple minutes and they affect far more than we can see. And you can only really come to understand this when you've seen both sides of it. When you've abstained for those things long enough to see the fruits, and when you've been addicted for them long enough to see the vices and the fruits that they kill that potentially could be there. And as I said, the night sets the tone for the morning sets the tone for the day, and the day sets the tone for the night. And if you don't value how you spend this time, if you don't spend it in a productive, not even productive, but sometimes it's not about what you do, it's about what you don't do. It honestly is so often more about what you don't do than what you do. Because when you don't do things, you set yourself up for success. A lot of times when I used to be in a position where, well, when I used to be in a position where I would, I would have, a couple hours until, I was going to go to bed or, whatever it would be. I'd have a couple hours and I would say, all I can do is read or write or nothing. Those are the three things that I can do in this time frame. And, or, go for a walk with no phone or something of that nature. But yeah, no social media, no phone, no internet, no anything of that. No trivial conversations, just potential deep work or potential rest. And I would be reading, and maybe my attention would start to lack, or I'd get a little tired, and I'd put the book down, and I'd just sit there. And, sometimes maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes would pass before I pick the book back up. But eventually, my energy would come back. I would have I would have the desire and the inspiration again to pick the book up, and I wouldn't just be going through the motions anymore. I would have got the rest in, and I would have been ready again to get at it. But I spent those 15 minutes, scrolling on social media or doing some trivial trivial thing that is not fruitful, then it would have inhibited the learning I just did and the learning to come. And the fact that I just did not do anything, I think that's what we need to do so often. When we rest, we need to truly rest. We need to, because whether you like it or not, that's why the intellectual, the mental junk food is so much more dangerous than the physical junk food, because you have to make a conscious effort to eat. And yes, you do need to make conscious efforts at time on what mental food you consume, But sometimes it's just no matter what you do, you're consuming the food. You're no matter what you do, if you just, so like I go to the gym I go to has, TVs, and you can't see them from every position in the gym. You can really only see them from where you do cardio. And when I'm walking around the gym, whether I like it or not, there's, 20 TV screens. And if I'm in the area where I can see them and I look at them, I'm consuming whatever, junk food is on the screen because it's all junk food. None of it's necessary, especially on a quick glance. None of it's necessary. And sometimes it's, a nature video or, something like that. But other times it's just, trivial sports ball, stupid things that is just does not need to be seen. And that is food that I'm consuming just being in the world, just being at the gym against my will, essentially. Because if it was up to me, I would just have the TVs turned off. But it's not up to me, so they're all on. So without my wanting it, I'm consuming that information, and that has an effect. And maybe I see something that takes me away from what I'm thinking about, takes me away from at that moment in time my workout, and then I'm thinking about this other thing, and then it's messing up my focus here, and then it's just a snowball effect. And that's the hard thing with that's the hard thing with the mental diet, is that a lot of times you're not completely in control of what you consume, and that sucks. So when we are completely in control, we need to really make a conscious, willful effort not to give into the junk, not to go on social media. Life, I can tell you, is far better without social media. I have not had social media for, you know, years at this point. And occasionally, I say years, but as um I still have, I have YouTube obviously, but that's a little different in my opinion. But I haven't had these other social media platforms for years, and occasionally I'll re-download them just to, see if anyone messaged me, or see what's, because I'm bored, and I'm not as disciplined as I used to be these days. And every time I do it, I feel worse. My attention's worse. My focus is worse. It messes me up for longer than I indulge in it, and it's never fruitful. It is never fruitful. It's always a waste of time, and I always instantly delete it. And it's always like, why? What was the point? What was the point? Because when you're not in that space, when you're not in that realm, it's crazy how little you need to know. When you may think that so many people talk to you, and you lose out on friendships and this, that, and the other. But I used to talk to hundreds of people for no apparent reason. And I thought those same thoughts. I said, oh, I can't just disappear. These people are going to be texting me, like, wondering what's going on. But you ignore so many people once, and delete social media and go back after a month. They have not talked to you. They're not wondering how you're doing. They don't care. Nobody cares. This is not a few people care, but those, you should only have a couple friends. The more friends you have, the less fruitful friendship is. And the less friends you have, the more fruitful those few friendships can be and should be. So I do agree with Aristotle that the good life involves friendship. But Aristotle says only a few, not many. Few deep intellectually, fruitful relationships. And not just fruitful in the, I give you something, you give me something, but fruitful in becoming a better person and your character growing and the connection that you have with these people. And you don't need social media for this. I don't want to turn this into a social media rant, but this is obviously the junk food of our age, the mental junk food of our age. When people are, I see it because I don't go on my phone that much. I honestly hate my phone, and I don't take it when I go places. I leave it in my car when I'm with friends. I have do not disturb on always, and I'm so often not on it. And when I'm in a public place where the nature of whatever I'm doing involves a waiting period, everyone instantly pulls out their phone and scrolls. And no one thinks, no one contemplates on, I sound like I don't know, I guess I sound like a philosopher, but, no one contemplates on or reflects on their life, or, contemplates the books they've been reading, or contemplates the the good life, or what they should be doing with their life. The answers we are seeking are in the silence that we are avoiding. And it's so clear that there's, in this modern day and age, people are afraid of silence. You go into a grocery store and there's always music playing. I go do things with people and they always need to play music. And I love music. And um yeah, I've been I there was a long period of my life where I didn't listen to music for, months. It was white noise in the gym. It was silent car rides. It was, if I was going to listen to something, it was a podcast, and it was a podcast about something I believe is important. It wasn't about, you know, who to pick in fantasy football, or, you know, what the Kardashians are doing, or some stupid, trivial, modern age junk food. It was, you know, Michael Surgeon's, a lecture on Plato's Republic, or, great video also. I probably pronounced his name wrong, but I think like Michael Surgen. Great lectures. Great lectures on YouTube for free. And if you enjoy philosophy, you would enjoy those. Um, but yeah, you're in public and there's no introspection, there's no thinking, there's nothing of this nature. It's instant gratification. It's junk food for the mind. And, I was recently watching a podcast, and it was talking about how like the rise of teen suicide rates are have direct correlation with the rise of social media and the rise of short form content. And I don't think it's not surprising to me, because every time I engage in those trivial things, and I hate that the modern age breeds it, because I'd just be happy enough not having them, but I know it's hard, because I struggle with it. For a long time I didn't, because as I was saying, when you're close to it, you see the fruits that the abstaining from it give you. But when you get so far removed from it, and it's just baseline now, you think you can engage back in these things that are don't take a lot of time, that they're not meaningful, but they're not meaningless. And you think you can go back to the instant gratification world of scrolling, but you can't. Once you have gotten rid of it and you go back to it, I can clearly feel my attention go. I can feel depression surging. I can feel annoyance. I can feel I start thinking about stupid things that I don't want to think about, that are clouding my brain just because I was scrolling. And that's the thing too. You have no control over your mental junk food. It's worse enough to be consuming mental junk food, but you got no control of the next thing that goes in your mouth. It might be a bag of chips, it might be a Twinkie. And I guess it's not all mental junk food, but I guess I should say mental food, and most of it's junk food. And you can follow good people, and sometimes you're getting apples, but if you're on a feed, you get suggested random things, and you could just out of nowhere get hit with a cake, and then your stomach hurts, even though you're eating apples and bananas and peas and steak, and you're eating good healthy food, and then out of nowhere, boom, you got hit with a cake, and you're like, what the hell? And you have no control over it. Being on apps of that nature should be, the search bar should be utilized, and your consumption should be solely in the search bar. But I know how hard that is, and I'm not good at it. And that's why I hate social media, because it breeds bad habits. I consider myself a fairly disciplined person, and I need to literally not have these things on my phone, or they are too addicting. I definitely have an addictive personality, even though I consider myself disciplined. But I think my discipline has roots in not even giving myself a chance not even giving myself a chance for moderation, because moderation is harder than abstaining from something. And abstention may be a vice, but it's better than excess in 99% of things. And Yeah, this video wasn't supposed to be about social media, but that is clearly the mental junk food of this day and age. And porn as well is horrible and should not be watched and should be banned. We live in a free country, and but I don't think we're free enough from bad desires and bad habits to be able to have access to these type of things because we're free. We're not free. We're all slaves to our desires. We all do things we do not want to do, knowing that we should not do them. Paul says in one of his letters to, probably the Romans, because everything Paul, all the cool things, nah, that's all of Paul's letters are good, but Romans is very good. But he says, "I know the good, but I do not do the good." Is that not all of us? Is that not all of us knowing I should not do this, but here I am doing it? We are not free. We are slaves. And this day and age is breeding slavery more than ever with, I mean, it's honestly criminal, these companies, because they have people with degrees in psychology at the forefront of their company saying, how can we get people to be on this as long as possible and keep them on it as long as possible? How can we have as many people spend as much time on this as possible? That is their goal. Their goal is not to you know give you 5 minutes of good food, good information, kick you off and say you reach your limit for the day. 5 minutes is enough. Go back to the world. Here's some book recommendations. Here's a good workout routine you should do. Go get your 10,000 steps. Eat these foods for health. That is not what these people are doing. That's not what they want from you. And I heard a good thing once where, if the app is free, your commission, I guess is the right word. Your commission is your intent, your attention. And that is the worst thing to give. Your time and your attention is the is the is the charge. A free app is the most expensive app on the App Store. The most expensive app, because it does not breed it doesn't breed any good habits in you. It breeds excess. It breeds a feeling that you're losing nothing. I'm going on my free app to get free information to, kill time. And, as Henry David Thoreau says, as if you could waste time without hurting eternity. And we are eternal. We are eternal. Wasting time hurts eternity. It hurts you. Not the fact that we're going to die, because that does not matter, but the fact that you are not going to live. Not living is far scarier than dying, and wasting time is not living. And I don't know how a life spent on social media is living. I don't know how a life where you are not the master of your mind is living. I don't know a life how you cannot abstain from the things you want to abstain from is living. And obviously, all those things we're going to fail at. And this modern age is not helping us. But to minimize it is the best version, is the best thing to do. And trying to just get as much healthy mental food in as possible is paramount. Not allowing yourself to have social media, not allowing yourself to waste time watching trivial TV, because I personally like watching anime, and I didn't watch anime for like 2 years because I was, like I said, it was at that threshold where I realized how bad these things were, and I started abstaining, and I realized how much better my life got. But now I'm at the period where I think I can reintroduce things, and I try, and it sucks because I'll try to watch, say an anime, try to watch something, and then the 20 minutes the episode is, it takes up so much more of my time than that, because I'm thinking about, oh, what's gonna happen next. There's another episode. Oh, I could, maybe I can watch the next one too, and then then I'll be done. And it's trivial, and the plot of anime is very good, and I think it's better than a lot of trivial junk food out there. But I think in a certain degree, it is still junk food. it does not benefit me. I think in the past, when I was of a worse character, when I had worse habits, it was beneficial to me. I gained I gained good moral lessons from watching Naruto, and gained inspiration from Dragon Ball, and different animes and stuff. And it was better than a lot of the other things I would be doing if I wasn't doing that. But at this day and age, it is not fruitful, and it is a vice, and it is something I need to abstain from, along with many other things. And with more time at your disposal, the harder it is, because you think because you no longer spend 8 hours a day doing this thing, that you can spend the rest of your whole day doing what you should be doing, and only spend an hour, you know, goofing off. But that hour messes up your attention on what you should be doing. And then that hour, depending on where it is, breeds bad habits in other places at other times. You do things and then you're playing catch up because you feel like you wasted time. As in before, when you had 8 hours set in stone for whatever this job, it was I have a limited amount of time. I cannot waste time. Now it is I have an abundance of time. I can waste a little bit of time. But that mindset breeds wasting days, wasting mornings, wasting evenings, wasting nights. And it all breeds from the mental junk food that we consume. As I said earlier, when I used to confine myself to reading and writing, I would sit there for as long as it took till I got the inspiration again. I'd think about what I was reading, I'd think about what I was writing. Maybe my mind would roam, maybe I'd think about someone I talked to the day earlier, a conversation I had, maybe a distant memory in the past, maybe start thinking about the future, you know, maybe something like that. But those things in and of themselves are not harmful. And I would so often, so quickly get back to doing good hard work with a little mental refresh. With, I would be getting a little bored maybe of what I was reading. I'd spend 15 minutes doing nothing and I'd be excited to get back to it. But if you're a little bored of reading and then you spend 15 minutes scrolling on social media, you may be excited to get back to it, but your attention's going to be lacking. The dopamine you just got destroyed with is not going to be getting released like it is now that you're reading, 100 words a minute, or whatever the pace of reading is. Um, it's not. It's a different ball game. It's a whole different thing, and you're not going to go back to reading with the same mental freshness, with the same ability to read something, elaborate on it, get away from it, and come back to it. Because I'll read, get inspiration for a video, maybe write a little bit about it, and then come make a video. And this is this is not junk food. This is a deep conversation where I'm trying to stay focused, hammering home one point, long form. This is not something that is breeding. I can go back to reading and I'll be fine. I'm not gonna. I want to continue reading because I'm reading the book called The Intellectual Life, and so far it's one of the best books I've ever read, and I'm really enjoying it. And what bred for this video was, last night I have a little I would say I was a little sleep deprived, and I was tired, but it wasn't time to go to bed, and I was like, I don't want to read anymore because I don't want to just go through the motions in this book. So I decided to watch some anime. And then, 4 hours later, I'm regretting my decisions. I'm going to bed late. I'm waking up sleep deprived, and I'm contemplating my mistakes. And like, that's what I'm talking about. And for me, that is a catastrophic error that I reproach myself for. But for the average person, that's just another night. That's just another day in the life. That's not even a night. That's like their afternoon. That's any free time they have. That's their weekends. And to me, that's insane. And that stuff makes me depressed. And I think that's why so many people are depressed because that's the stuff they do. I've, you know, got really no fulfillment from it. It was enjoyable to a certain degree, but as Epicurus would say, the pleasure of something is the then and there and then the after. And if you regret it after, which I don't wholly completely regret it because my brain was pretty fried, but I mean, my like, the goal of last night would have been sleep deprived, get a lot of sleep, sleep for at least 8 hours, hopefully get like 10, and, boom, back at it, waking up strong and solid to start the day. Because the things I like to do take mental energy. I cannot be tired or sleep deprived, or I'm not going to work at a high enough level for what I know I could be doing. And so that was basically the only objective I had. I spent the whole day reading and writing and doing good things, and I ruined it the last couple hours of the day, which didn't ruin my morning, but I think my morning could have been more fruitful. And then I started reading after the gym. I was pretty tired in the gym. Started reading after the gym, and now I'd say I'm finally back to my mental capabilities. I'm finally out of worrying about what happened last night. I'm finally, like, I did get 8 hours of sleep, so I'm not completely destroyed. Um, but it took too long. It took too long to get to a good state. The night should end in a good state. The morning should begin in a good state, and it shouldn't be this prolonged period where you have this little space in between where you're focused, attentive, and then the rest of it's just messing around. And it's no, no. So the main point, obviously, be wary of the mental food you were eating and realize that, I mean, I think social media, you should not have social media if you still do. And be aware that you do need to make a conscious effort to be aware of the mental food that you are eating, because it's not like food where you need to actively do put something inside of your mouth and consume it. You can literally just be walking through the gym and then get your attention captured by something on the TV, because, as we said, free anything that's free, its goal is to just keep you there. It's to keep your attention. So all those free TVs playing free things, that's their only goal. So even you can be disciplined, but your attention can lapse for a minute and you can see something interesting, shiny, bright, colorful, and then a minute goes by and you're just like, what? No, what am I doing? And you're completely thrown off. And that can happen if that happens in a state of deep work. You have your phone next to you and you get a phone call and it's something stupid and trivial, and then you're like, and then by habit you click on social media. You know, 3-4 hours of deep work is what they recommend for deep work, for deep workers. I say they, but Cal Newport has a book called Deep Work, and it talks about the 3 to 4 hours, and that's like what a lot of like geniuses have given to their craft in a day, because beyond that you're kind of burnt out and this, that, and the other. So to interrupt that time, one thing is a horrible idea, horrible idea, especially from your phone. That's another thing. It's not a conscious, willful thing. You didn't want your phone to tell you it's time to check you. So that's why you should have do not disturb on. I want to check my phone when I think I want to check my phone right now. I don't want my phone to tell me, hey, it's time to check me. I don't care what you're doing. Like, and if you get a notification, I mean, I'm a type of person who I struggle with letting things just sit. If I get a notification, I cannot just hear it and be like, oh, yeah. I want to know what it is. If it's someone texting me, I want to know what they're saying. I want to answer. And then if I answer, I want to know what they're going to say. So I'm waiting for it And you probably have a better relationship with all of that than I do, but that's the reason why I cannot be in that space. And that's why you have to know yourself and put yourself in a position to succeed. And I recommend everyone do that. And that's why, too, there's only 3-4 hours of deep work you can do a day. That time period has to be pure, it has to be perfect. It has to be as you can, perfect as it can be. And there's just simple things that you obviously should not have. You shouldn't have your phone right next to you with the screen up with notifications on. That doesn't promote anything good. You shouldn't have a lot of people around you talking, asking you questions, taking you out of focus. Solitude is great for deep work. And solitude, true solitude, takes away all the other things. So true solitude for deep work. But then only 3 to 4 hours. So you have 10 to 12 hours the rest of the day. That 10 to 12 hours is going to affect that 3 to 4 hours. And what you choose to do with that time is paramount. And you can choose to spend that time in a way that will make the 3 to 4 more fruitful, or you can spend that time in a way that will make the 3 to 4 less fruitful and harder to even do, harder to even engage in, less. It takes discipline at the end of the day to do something of that nature years on end, but you can still put yourself in a position where you can say, I'm kind of inspired to go do that right now. Or you can put yourself in a position every day where you say, oh, like, I'm tired, I didn't get enough sleep, I'm thinking about this stupid random thing, do I really have to go do this right now? And you can set yourself up for success or failure, is basically the moral of the story. And junk food is setting yourself up for failure. And we need to be aware of it in this day and age.